Okay, take that.
Good day, everyone. This is Juanita Kapp from Meticulous Moments, guys. I'm from South Africa, but today I'm streaming from Indiana. That's right. I'm here in Anderson, Indiana, and Meticulous Moments has a phenomenal guest today. I'm so excited to host my wonderful friend and brother, John Olivier. Now, I said Oliver, and he said, it's French. You pronounce it Olivier. And I thought, my goodness, that is such a beautiful way of pronouncing that. But guess what, guys? And we're going to talk about that a little bit later in this interview. He speaks 4 languages. So we're going to delve into his amazing career in the martial arts. We're going to talk about the fantastic ice breaking that he did in 1983, I believe, and so much more. But before we start with this amazing interview, let's welcome John to the stage this morning. Welcome, John, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here. Good morning to you.
Thank you, John. You are so welcome. Now, I've read so many amazing things in your biography. I guess let's start at the beginning. Tell me, how did all of this come about? How did you get started in the martial arts?
Sure. Yeah, I got started in the martial arts. It goes way back, actually. I was born in France, in the southern part of France called Toulon, was the city. And my father, my mother were prisoners of war in the Second War. So they met there in a forced labor camp. And then after 3.5 years in Germany, when the Americans came for the invasion and bombing, they had the opportunity at that moment to escape. And so they escaped from Germany, going into France, where I was born. I was born there in 1944. And my father, he was a jeweler, hand engraver. So he had the ability to always have a job. And so during that time, he was still pretty scared. And so he decided to leave France and move on. And I was 5 years old at the time. And so he took a freighter ship. And so when he took this freighter ship, we all went together and we would go to different ports. So I got to know the different countries. I think it was something like 20, 25 countries that we went to.
Oh.
And we finally ended up in Mexico City. Mm-hmm. We lived there for 3.5 years in Mexico City. Then again, my father decided, you know what? Let's go to the United States. And the first place we went to was New York. And we established in New York right there.
Wow.
So I didn't know how to speak English,
mm-hmm.
one. And so my father, he established himself getting an engraving job. My mother worked as a waitress. And the Central Park was my babysitter. I would go there and play and whatnot. But at the same time that I play, there was gangs there. I was getting beat up, so I would hide in bushes, and I didn't know what to say, you know. So I was scared. So one day, when I was getting beat up, this Asian man saw me, and he goes, "You want to learn karate?" And I said, "Karate?" I didn't know what karate was.
Yeah.
And so these gang members, they come up to him and say, well, who are you? Well, what are you going to do? You know? So he looks down on the ground like this, and he sees this rock. Bam! Breaks it right in half. And I go, oh my God. I said to myself, what kind of a Superman is this? You know? I just shook my head and said, yeah, I'll do this, you know? And in the gang, they just start running, you know, they start running away because this is phenomenal. Little did I knew he was a world-renowned grandmaster. His name was
Wow.
Masutatsu Oyama. And so I started learning from him. And so I learned, and then I had many other instructors along the line because I wanted to be outside of the box.
Right.
I learned Aikido, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu. So I had many instructors along the line, and then I start thinking up to myself, you know, you can't be in the box and get out of the box
Yeah.
because as time went on, I started to develop my own systems,
Oh,
and I do it. Yeah, I do it in a mathematical way and
yeah.
geometry way. Because
Wow.
traditionally in martial arts, you uh, how to say have patterns. You have
Yeah.
either a zigzag pattern where you do
Right.
kata,
Yep.
or you do a H form or a I
Right.
form. Well,
Yeah.
I went beyond that,
Wow.
and I looked at things differently than other people. So
Mhm.
I've been in it for 62 years right now. So I have over 100 black belts under me and over 10,000 students altogether that have appeared in my
Incredible.
life.
Wow, that is incredible. I'm so happy that you mentioned the science, the mathematics, and the geometry that goes with martial arts. Lots of people don't know
Mm-hmm.
that. They think you go
Mm-hmm.
there, you get tough, you learn how to fight, you can beat someone up, boom, it's done. No, people, there's so many things that are
Mm-hmm.
underlying and woven into the martial arts. If you do taekwondo, there is a certain letter that you form. If you do your kata, there are certain directions that you go. There is so, and it differs from style to style. And I'm so happy that you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
that because that's the first time in the history of the show that that has been brought up in the conversation. So I'm so happy that you went beyond that so that people can understand the
Mm-hmm.
science of the martial arts. Now, you're a 10th Dan, but that's not all. I saw a photo, and I'm going to bring it up on the screen on this edit when I put this all together, guys, because we're recording. But let
Mm-hmm.
me tell you something. I saw a photo of John, and he's going to be able to explain how I think it was 10 layers. I saw him on top of this structure, and there were ice structures below him, and he broke through that ice. And I want to ask you, tell us about that world record because that has never been beat. Tell us how you did that and what did you do?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I'll be glad to. It took many years to begin with to get to that point. So I did a lot of training in the old system. For example, that karate, meaning the empty hand, uh, you needed to develop the hand. You hit the what they call
Hand
the
pump.
makiwari. So you punch
Yeah.
the makiwari to develop the hands. And so I thought to myself, yeah, I did that, but also over time, what happens is that you destroy your hands, all the nerves and whatnot, and disfigure your hands. So
Right.
I went beyond that because we all heard about ki, right? Which
Mm.
is the internal energy that comes from the tin. They call that the tin, which is the harnessing of the chi or the ki. Chi is Chinese and ki is Japanese
Okay.
terminology. So I worked on that to develop that energy, the ki, the chi. So uh, I decided that I was going to challenge myself in breaking Tamashiwari. What am I going to break? So we'll start, let's say, a board. Then after the board, I decided, well, let me do some bricks. So I broke bricks. I broke up to 22 bricks stacked up. And then I started to break rocks. Then I started to break glass. I would chop the necks off bottles with my hand, with a shuto hand. Yeah, just boom. Yeah. So then I go, wow, then I decided, well, I'm going to try an engine block, aluminum engine block, a busted aluminum engine block. So
Wow.
I kept my challenging going on and on and on. And then a long time ago, I saw a man start breaking ice. I said, wow. His name was Tiggy. And I said, oh, I want to try that. But Tiggy, he was breaking half the ice, like it was 150 pound each piece of ice that he would break. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try to break the 340-pound blocks. So I did my first ice.
That's it.
I think it was about 1972, something like that. I had a teacher by the name of Solomon Kahiwalu, who taught the Hawaiian system called the Ilua Lima, which means two hands. And so we were doing a demonstration. We had a band that did, the drums and all that. And so they hyped me up, and I'm going, I'm going to break this 340-pound piece of ice. And boom, I did, So as time went on, I kept building it up like everybody else would do, the challenge themselves. And over time, what happened was I decided, I'm going to do a world record. And I did my first world record back in, I think it was 1973. I had the news media come. And at that time, I broke about, I think it was 1,600 pounds of ice. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to challenge this a little bit more. And so the ambassador of Singapore got a hold of me and says, we would like to have you break ice at our event called the Dragon Boat Race event. It's a good luck thing. And there's like 22 people on the boat, and they all row the boat. And it's an 800-meter race that they do. And so anyway, I had the ice stacked up for me, 10 feet high, weighing 2,100 pounds. I'm in front of about 15,000 people, plus the news media covering it and everything. And so I get up there, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to go through this. I'm going to go through this ice. This is my thought, because when you develop your chi, what you do is you have the intention, right, to do. The second thing, you have to do the visualization. And the third thing is the action that takes place.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking all this in my mind, right? And so I wind up 1, 2, 3, bam. And then all of a sudden, this crash and this boom, and everything is coming down. And everybody's so surprised and gasped, and I hear this roaring clap. So I did it, and I go, whoa. And I was proud of myself doing that, because that was my goal, my challenge, my world record. And since then, nobody's done it.
I can imagine.
So, yeah, and then the mayor of San Diego, this is where I reside, it's in San Diego. The mayor of San Diego gave me the key to the city, and that's the story on the ice break.
That is incredible. I saw the photo, and I looked again, and I thought, is that glass? Is that ice? That looks so huge. You were on a structure just to get to the top.
Yeah.
Broke it. That photo, guys, you're going to see, it shows how it breaks all the way through. Now, I mean, how did that feel? I know that you'd for years been, breaking things. How did it feel that moment when it went all the way through and you broke all of that ice and everybody saw?
Actually, the feeling at the time is hard to kind of remember, but it was exciting to me that I accomplished it, that I did it. It was very exciting. And I said, well, what's next? You know, what's the
That's
next?
the right mindset.
Yeah. And so that in turn led me to other avenues to do things. Um, I was involved with charity drives such as Make-A-Wish Foundation,
Very good.
Jerry Lewis Muscular Telethon. I did demonstrations for that because when we did these demonstrations, people would donate money. Well, if you do this, we'll give you so much money, so on. And so I had one funny incident that I had with that was I got a hold of a bunch of black belts, and I said, you know what? Let's do this demonstration, and for everything that we do in this demonstration, people will donate money. And you know what that was? It was a brick house. We all went in there and destroyed the brick house for kicking and punching, knocking down walls and whatnot. And we collected over, I think it was $50,000 on that.
For the community. Wow.
Yeah, and then I did other charities. I developed one called the Have a Heart for Kids. It's for children that were being abused, homeless.
Yeah.
I would do tournaments, and so money that we made from the tournaments, I donated that. I did the same thing for St. Jude. The same thing for St. Jude.
Right.
Got certificates and medals from St. Jude for thanking us for doing that. You know, to help the children that had cancer and parents didn't have money.
Wow.
And so the donations go to the foundation, which was done by Danny Thomas. And then his daughter, you know, took over when Danny Thomas passed, you know. So, and it's still going on now to this day, St. Jude.
That is incredible. And that's why, sir, you are a perfect guest for this show, because community upliftment through leadership development is what we do here at Meticulous. We love to pour into the community. We love to speak to leaders who are inspiring other upcoming leaders, who are sharing their experience, their knowledge, their wisdom, their understanding, so that they can go and prosper in what they are doing. Now, community is so, so important. And you have poured out so much into your community. And I was speaking to someone last night, and we were talking about the fact that martial arts changes the community for the better, because it changes the person, it changes the character, it shapes us into new people, it shapes us to throw away the things that we don't need and to keep the things and work on the things that we've been gifted with, the things that we are good at. Now, I want to ask you, sir, you have trained so many years. And you have had different masters, you've looked into different styles, and I'm so, so happy to hear that and to put that out on this show, because that's a well-rounded way, that's a holistic way of looking at the arts. The arts is not just one. There's so many different styles, and having done karate like yourself, having done jiu-jitsu, that shaped you into the person you are today and into the things that you know and the things that you share with people. Tell us about what is important. Let's say there's young martial artists looking at the show. There's going to be someone in the audience that needs to hear this because it just came into my mind. What is the most important part of the martial arts journey to you? What was it for you? What was the most important part?
Well, you know, when I first learned it, because like I said, when I was a child, I was being beat up. So there was this vindictiveness that you have. I'm going to beat up the world and all that. But I find out later that that's not it. That's not the answer to it, because what it did, it helped me have discipline, honor, respect.
Yeah.
And at that time, you weren't allowed to talk to your teacher. They had a mediator. And so you would talk to the mediator, and the mediator would translate to the instructor.
Yeah.
Little did I know the instructor actually really knew English, but you weren't allowed to talk to him because that was disrespectful. And then later on, when he had a good feeling about me, then he would speak to me. Like one time, as a kid, I used to get down on the ground, and he gave me a couple coconut shells and says, start rotating them on the floor. So I was rotating on the floor. I says, why am I doing this? He said, you're polishing the floor. But little did I know, I was building up my arms and wrists, things like that,
right,
to get a full understanding of blocking, for example. You know, and so as time went on, anyway, I decided, you know what? I learned how to destroy or kill somebody, but then I want to know how to heal. So I decided to become an acupuncturist. So I became an acupuncturist. And then my wife, she was a Reiki master. So I learned Reiki. And so that's called the Universal Light Healing.
Right.
It was discovered by Dr. Yusi, you know, and so I do Reiki healing. I do acupuncture, because set aside the violence of karate, for example, it's not that, you know. So what you're doing is building character. Because I had the kids that come to me that were involved with drugs or getting beat up or stealing. And so when they went through my program, it was fantastic, because they were with me for a few years, and then I would hear from them say, guess what, Grandmaster, I became a doctor. I'm now a cardiologist. I'm a biochemist. I work for Air Force One, for the president. And I start crying, you know, because I molded their personality.
That's right.
Feels so good, you know. It feels real good.
Right. It's your legacy.
So that, and then and then here is I live on my ranch. I got 12 acres here. I got horses. We love horses, animals. We do archery. We do kind of like the old martial arts, the old ways. You know, it's not like what it is today, because
the old type of training.
Today we got about roughly 1,500 styles in the world.
Yes.
And we have very little 10th degree, legitimate 10th degrees I'm talking about.
That's right.
And I have very good friends of mine that past grandmasters. I got some grandmasters that are still living today, like Michelle Manu is one of them. She's Hawaiian, and she's kind of like my sister, because we learned from the same teacher. Then we have Thomas Matosi, tremendous background. His father started the system. Their family, I think, is 300 years back. Then we have Terry Wilson. He's jiu-jitsu. He's a 7-time Emmy Award winner, writer. I have also John Monty, another good friend of mine. He's a radio announcer. He's been in the entertainment field too. You know, he's a 7th degree in Sun Tzu, which was developed by Jimmy Woo. You know, the list is long. You know, I mean, old grandmasters. A lot of old grandmasters have been dying too, because with their age, COVID, cancer, so on and so forth. You know, but anyway.
It's amazing what they and yourself have imparted into their students, because here the feedback that we are receiving here, you know, that you shape their personalities through the art. They went on and they lived successful lives. And I think it's amazing the way your wife and you do the ranch, because, you know, with the horses and the archery, and learning the skills, that's the traditional way, guys, that was taught. That people were taught how to go into battle. And they came out victorious because they were skilled in various ways. They could handle themselves. Now, that makes me think of a Korean drama that I watched during COVID, and it's called Warang. And in this story, it's all about, you know, the empress and her certain group of people. They were the warang, and they were skilled in riding the horses and the archery and fighting. And it's such a beautiful story because it shows the beauty of the art of fighting. And then there's a story interwoven. And I think a lot of people, and why I mentioned that, I do that for a reason. You know, our martial arts is not just something that we do separately. It's not that we have our life here and then we have the arts here on that side. Those are not two different boxes. I want the audience to know this. If you're thinking to put your child in the arts, or if you're a grown up, and you can start at any time in your life, you can start at any age because it's a journey. It's not two different boxes. When you start the arts, they are interwoven. It becomes your life. It becomes who you are. You start to understand. And John, you mentioned that you understand and you see the world differently. You see the world in another light. And I want to place focus on respect because I feel that was the greatest value that I could truly understand when I went into the martial arts, was how to have respect for myself and how to respect others, my master. And I mentioned this because respect has a lot to do with what people say, what people do, how they react in situations. Now, for instance, just to use a general example, you mentioned in those days you couldn't directly address your master. You couldn't speak to him. There was someone translating. Even though he spoke English, that was the way that it was done. It was the tradition. It was about respect. Now, something I learned in the martial arts, John, and you'll know, is that when you are doing weapons training, it doesn't matter if you're busy with the nunchucks or the sai or the bow, weapons, it can be wooded or bladed, doesn't matter. If your kyoshi, if your sensei is busy giving that class, and for some reason he drops his weapon, do you know what the rest of the class does? We all drop our weapons because it's a sign of respect that he is our teacher. We don't know better. We don't think we know better. We are learning. Talk a little bit to us about respect. You know, what does this, how did respect manifest itself to you when you were in the arts?
Well, to say, when I was learning the arts, like, for example, you would talk about the weapons.
Yeah.
Weapons is basically a mere extension of your own hands and arms. What if I do, let's say, a movement like this, that's extended with that weapon? See, I mastered about 35 weapons altogether.
35?
And
that's incredible.
What I do is, for example, when I teach a student the weapon, I give the history of the weapon, where it came from, why they used it. And for every weapon that you would have, there is also a counter weapon. What does this counter weapon do, right? And so I explained the history behind all that, and they go, wow, we didn't know that, you know. It's not just a weapon. There's a lot to it. And Okinawa, for example, was one of the prime sources of weaponry.
Yes.
For one example is like the nunchaku. You know, everybody's doing nunchaku. I mean, you can do all kinds of fancy things and whatnot. You see somebody throwing it up in the air, this and that, you know, flipping it around and say, oh, that's really great, but it's not really the practical way of defending yourself. So they don't talk about really that, how you defend yourself, how you actually really use it. And nunchaku means two sticks tied together. That's the definition of it. You know?
Yeah.
And what it was is in the time of, it is said, in the time in Okinawa, there was a village announcer. They call it village watcher, and he would go around the village, and if the enemy was to come into the village, he had these two sticks, and he'd clack the sticks together like this, warning everybody.
Yes.
And so that kind of became a little bit of a weapon because he would implement it a certain way. And then the other thing they said about it was that at one time it was a bridle for horses. So they put in
Aha.
the mouth, and they use that. Yeah,
Interesting.
they use that. Yeah, and they use that to defend themselves when the enemy would. The Japanese would invade into Okinawa, you know, and so then the weapon itself was tied together with horsehair, right? So they
Oh,
go,
I see.
sword will go right through that, right? Cut the
Yeah.
horsehair in half. So
Yeah.
then they go, let's put a chain on it. So they put a
Yes,
chain
make
on
it
it so that
stronger.
wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So you can see the history and the progression of the weapon,
Yeah.
what happens to that weapon. And, you
Yeah.
know, Chinese have a lot of weapons still. They have a lot
Yes,
of weapons. And,
there's a lot of weapons. Yeah.
yeah, I've learned a lot of Chinese weapons. Like one of them, we had not too long ago, we had a celebration of students that learn a few forms with a spear, and they called the spear the flame spear. It looks like a flame, and it has
Oh, like a play?
tassels on it.
Wow.
And so the tassels were generally horsehair.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a ceremony giving them the certificate of learning the spear, the flame spear, and we cut some of the mane off the horse to give to them to
Yeah.
pass on the spirit of the horse to them, you know, because
Yeah.
the tassel was a distraction to the opponent. Plus,
That's right.
hate to put it cruelly, but also to shake the blood off once the spear was
That's
hit its
right.
target, you know,
That's
shake the
right.
blood off, you know. So that's how the weapons come about. And then Lucy, my wife, Lucy,
Yeah.
and I, we used to play with horses. We get on the horses and run with the horses and have the sword, wailing the sword over our heads.
Yeah.
And then we had gores set up and cut the gores in half, you know, at a run, and do archery at a run.
Yeah. That's good.
Shoot the arrow right through hoops. So we
Good training.
tried
Wow.
to go to a different level, you
Uh-huh.
know, of the martial arts, because that's what the warriors did.
That's
You
what
know,
they
way
did.
back when, you know,
That's what they
500,
did.
600 years ago.
That's right. And
So
it's important to learn the history of the weapon. And guys, don't get us wrong. This fancy stuff that you see at the competitions, you know, with the nunchaku, it's beautiful. It's amazing. You know, and there's the other side of that, and that's the side that we're talking about, is really knowing how to use the weapon and what is it for. Not just knowing the history, but also learning how to use it, how to be effective with it, why you're doing what you're doing in a certain situation. So there you go. There is a bit of history for you from John about how the nunchaku came about. Now, of course, everything's going to develop in a certain way. It's very important, of course, that we know these things, John, because lots of people think these tassels on the spears is just there for decoration. It's not there for decoration. That wasn't the original. Maybe today they can be, but that wasn't the original purpose. The original purpose was, like John said, when you have slain your opponent, to clean the blood off. And I mean, this is war, right? This was fighting. So it's so awesome to hear about the history and where it came from and what it does. And the same in kata. Katas are beautiful. It's amazing. I can sit and watch katas from the World Karate Champions and the federations all day. It's beautiful. And then there's the other side of that, knowing the bunkai. What am I doing when I'm doing that? What am I doing when I'm doing a soto uke or a uchi uke or a agi uke or a kakato? What am I breaking? What am I stepping on? So the arts is so alive. It's so big that John and I can talk about it, I guess, 24 hours a day, because there's so much of knowledge that we learn as we go along. Now, John, it's such a huge honor. I wanna hear two things from you. And the first thing would be, which was your favorite weapon that you learned? Because you mastered 35 weapons. Which one was your favorite weapon and why?
actually, it's the katana. Was my
Katana
favorite weapon.
sword.
Yeah, everybody calls it the samurai, but samurai is actually the soldier.
Yeah.
And he's a samurai. And the katana is interesting because what I loved about it is the beginning of the katana is how it was made.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, I go, the process is just totally amazing because you have the master craftsman that makes the katana, and he goes to the mountain and he picks the iron that he wants. There's a certain way that the iron has to be formed, and then a certain way that he gets the steel, and a certain way that when he comes to the kilt to melt it down, and then he goes through the process of the folding of the blade. He puts it into the fire, and then he has his assistants pound it out, fold it. I've seen 2,000 folds, and it's a big process. And then he goes to the claying of the blade to make the hardness. So there's a certain part of the sword that it has to be soft, and yet it has to be hard. Otherwise, the blade will just snap or break. You're in combat. If you're going to be clashing sword to sword, you better make sure you got a good sword, or you're just dead. Because the samurai it is like the Westerners, the cowboys, to say that they're facing each other. They're gonna pull the gun out, and the first one that pulls the gun out, he gets killed, right? So this is the same way with samurai.
That's right.
Yeah, it's the same way with samurai. Whoever pulls the sword out the fastest, he's going to get killed. Now,
that's right.
So anyway, to make a long story short, that interests me, and so I start to work with it, and I was doing some crazy stuff with it when I did demonstrations. Like I would stand barefooted on broken glass, for example, blindfold myself, take one of my students, lay him down, and put a watermelon on him.
Yeah.
And I would cut the watermelon into 4 pieces while I'm standing on glass, blindfolded. And that was one of my demonstrations that I would do with it. And everybody's going, whoa, And so I got to, and I got to the point where I was cutting a carrot on the throat, cutting a carrot on the stomach, blindfolded, standing on broken glass. So the audience went, oh, because in those days, nobody's ever seen that.
Right.
Nowadays, you got to be really careful because there's possible lawsuits, this and that. So you got to be careful. I don't do it anymore, but I could still do it. I can still do it. But I learned the form of the katana, the approaches, how to pull it out and in, just a variety of things, a discipline.
Yeah. Discipline, very important, technical stuff. And when you mentioned the process it takes to make that katana, it is good that happens that way, and that's telling us something, because that process is actually uniting you with that blade. It took blood and sweat and tears to do your training. It took blood and sweat and tears to get, for any martial artist, to get to that place where you've mastered the weapon, to get to that place where your blade is perfect. And we respect that weapon, because a weapon is not just something you pick up and you start doing. It is something that you respect because it's teaching you and it's imparting into your life. And that's something that I don't think people realize, something, the personal side of the martial arts journey. It's a personal, lifelong journey, whether you're working with people, whether you're working with weapons, whether you're working on your chi, your energy, like you said, putting out that intentions, visualizing what you're going to do, going into that action. It's a very spiritual journey as well, in a sense. It's something that really changes every part of you. And I think that is what the world needs. That's why we keep saying, and you mentioned that, John, and I spoke to someone about that last night as well, was that martial arts is changing the world, it's changing the community for the better. And I thank God for bringing me on that path, and I'm sure you are so happy when you look back for that day when you met that Grandmaster. He broke that rock and you saw those bullies just scattering, and you knew here was the answer, to this was your destiny. Here's the answer to what you needed to do next. Now, you've shared so many golden nuggets. We'll have to have you back for a second session, John. Absolutely. I mean, that has to happen because we have to talk about a lot more of your experience. But for today's session, if I can ask you one final question, that would be, give us some words of wisdom. You've been in it for so many decades. Tell the audience what's on your heart for them today so that they can carry that into their life, their day, and in their families.
Well, it is really simple. Adversity makes a man wise, and the philosophy basically is treat the human being kindly, with love and respect and honor. And this is the way I would want to be treated. So if you treat that person like that, then that's what you got. You never want to go into the negative end of it. You always want to go into the positive end of things.
That's right.
So, that's why like my wife and I, we do the Reiki, and we send Reiki to the world now.
Yeah.
Because we are in such turmoil in the world now that we need peace and love and not war. And, although in the martial arts, they always say, in order for us to have peace, we must prepare for war.
That's right.
But, the thing is, if you send that peace out, there will be no war. That's my philosophy. Love and respect others.
Respect.
And,
discipline.
I expect.
That's right. I agree with you. Absolutely, John. You've said some incredible things here. Adversity teaches a man wisdom. Adversity, having to go through that adversity and come out victorious on the other side, that is something that you would never trade in the whole world, because that wisdom that you gain from that is something that you could only get through that struggle. And I agree with you completely. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And I'm with John on every single thing that he mentioned today, and especially what he said here at the end, guys. And I've said this a million times on the show, John, and that's send out good energy every day. Doesn't matter what you're going through, make sure to send out that good energy. Always keep your side of the street clean, guys. You know what I mean? And work for peace. There's enough retaliation. There's enough fighting going on. There's enough lying. There's enough disrespect. There's enough people treating other people with no dignity. You just put out that good energy and be a good person, and you will bring about peace in relationships, in friendships, in the world, in your field of study. You be the changing agent. So I want to say thank you to our Grandmaster John Olivier today. This was session 1, guys. We have to have a session 2. There's too much else that we have to discuss. But for today, I just want to say, thank you, sir. It was a tremendous honor to interview you. And may you and your beautiful wife and your family be richly blessed. And I'll see you in the next session.
Thank you very much, Juanita. And you take care and have a good day.
Thank you, sir. Bye, guys.
Bye.